There are some brand new cards in a secret lair announced today. Let's talk about what they are and how we design them. Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast. And today kicks off our Extra Life festivities for this year, where we help raise money for Extra Life charity and support Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Every year, these hospitals benefit over 10 million kids, really changing lives. Recently, Seattle Children's was able to open a new center in Magnuson here in Washington, focused on autism and behavioral health, a project that was really made possible by donations. It's a great charity, and we have a ton going on to support them. And what's better than getting some cool magic stuff and supporting kids in the process? The big one we're doing is Ponies the Galloping 2. I'll tell you more about the cards and how we made them in a moment, but this sequel to the original has some brand new silver bordered ponies for you to enjoy. You can grab it starting right now until November 6th at $39.99 for the non-foil version and $49.99 for the all-foil version. You can also find some cool sleeves on Magic the Gathering Arena featuring the ponies and our Extra Life logo for the year, as well as a Pinkie Pie avatar too. These all cost gems. How about some wearables and accessories? Ultra Pro is going to be making a variety of neat stuff, including playmats, shirts, and my personal favorite, this satin jacket. And I gotta get me one of those. If you want to go check out all the merch, go to extralifeshop.com. We've also got streams, some activities at MagicCon Vegas later this week, and more. To find out where to go grab all these things and learn more about everything we're doing, you can go to extralife.wizards.com, where we have a hub with details on all of this. But to me, the highlight is certainly the return of Ponies the Galloping, featuring the rest of the main six and letting people finally let every pony win the game with Princess Twilight Sparkle. I figured who better to talk to about their creation than lead designer of both the original and new Ponies the Galloping, Chris Mooney. Let's hear from them all about it. Okay, everybody, I am here with Chris Mooney, senior game designer on Magic and huge My Little Pony fan. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll talk about Ponies the Galloping 2 in a second, but actually it's pretty perfect. You were the lead designer of Ponies the Galloping 1, right?
That's right. So it was maybe my first week at Wizards, like just got into the office, and they were like, oh, you should look on our internal website to see the upcoming things. And I was just clicking around, looking at the upcoming projects. And then I saw, wait a minute, Ponies the Galloping. And I just, as a big fan, I just immediately jumped on that. I was like, I want to help make this, you know, if I recall the original designs, I was like, the color identities are all wrong. And they were like, Chris, take it. So that's actually one of the first things I did when I got to Wizards. And I'm so excited to be able to like follow it up with Ponies the Galloping 2.
Yeah, fantastic. And people have asked for years when Princess Twilight Sparkle can finally have every pony win the game. And today it will finally be possible. You will be able to have every pony win the game.
That's right. When we made that original Twilight Sparkle card, it used to only have the first part. And I was like, it needs something more to really spice it up and to make it memorable. So we added in that every pony wins the game line. But of course, we knew at the time that we were throwing forward to eventually doing the rest of the cast. And you know, it took several years, but finally the right opportunity came along, and we were like, all right, now is the time. Let's do the rest of them.
All right, well, let's kick it off by talking about Applejack. Tell me about this card design, and how it kind of fits the character.
Right. So coming in, the initial two of the main six that we did were both white and blue. So we know we wanted in this round to have two that were white green and two that were white red, which really lined up nicely with the personalities of the different characters. Applejack, you know, she's very family focused. So she's physically the largest or the toughest. So we knew we wanted her to be the largest of the group. But we also wanted to make sure that we were hitting on that family aspect. And one additional thing is that all of these cards are silver bordered, you know, so they exist kind of beyond the realms of the normal rules of Magic. Last time around, Rarity was a card that benefited you for having actual My Little Pony toys with you. And since Applejack is the character that's most about family and gathering people together, we really wanted to lean into that here and let people have a lot of fun having tons of different toys on the battlefield of all different shapes and sizes. The different abilities that Applejack gives you are based on kind of the main types of pony characters, you know, ponies and pegasi and unicorns, but we left it open-ended so that you could really bring in any toys that you happen to have lying around to just make your own fun family gathering on the battlefield.
I know we actually playtested these cards in CPD. Do you remember any of the fun toys people brought to the table were to use with Applejack?
I think originally we said, oh, you should have a My Little Pony toy. But when we play tested it in the office, Melissa DeTora like reached back and grabbed like a Jace Funko Pop, and then someone brought in a giant statue of Nicol Bolas, and then someone, I think, just grabbed a giant robot that they had on their desk, and all of a sudden we were like, okay, it's way more fun if you can get anything, because it just opens up so many more possibilities and hilarious board states.
Nicol Bolas got horns, you're ready to go.
And wings.
Now, one thing you mentioned there is that these are silver bordered, and you want to talk about the return of the silver border here.
Well, in the most recent unset, which was Unfinity, that set had its own unique stamp, the acorn stamp, which indicated that card was outside of the normal rules of Magic. Here, because these cards are so aligned with the previous Ponies, the Galloping, which had the silver border, we decided that we wanted to go back and use the silver border just to make sure that these cards lined up visually with those cards. You'll also be able to see, as we look at the rest of the Pony the Galloping 2 cards, that they also have their own unique frame decorations that feature, their specific colors and their cutie marks in the same way that the originals did.
Right, so we gotta get the apples up top here for Applejack. That's perfect. Well, moving right along, let's go on to Fluttershy. Talk to me about this card.
So Fluttershy was definitely a tricky one to get right. Fluttershy in this TV show, very famously not just shy, but also a pacifist. Really doesn't like getting into fights or harming other creatures, which led us to the challenge of trying to make sure that we were staying true to the character by making something that was more about buffing and protecting than it was about really getting into the red zone and fighting. The sort of marquee ability here is the stare down, which is a direct reference to one of her abilities in the show. But the first ability is really the one that I think we focused in on creating really fun deck building choices. Fluttershy is a lover of all sorts of creatures, and we found that having a tail was actually a really fun batch that got you to think about different sorts of creatures throughout the history of Magic and which ones you might want to put together into this Fluttershy deck.
Yeah, when you were trying to build this deck out, what are some of your favorite tails you found?
So, of course, there's a lot of kind of immediate ones that come to mind, especially token makers. So squirrels and birds and cats, things that are small and fluffy and very cute. But if you've watched the show, you know that Fluttershy doesn't just like the small, cute creatures, but she's a friend to all animals. And so large things like bears and the various beasts that we printed over the years, or like giant elephants, were also something that was really fun to get into the mix with the rest. Okay,
well, moving right along to Pinkie Pie, which I think is probably my favorite of this bunch. I think this card is delightful. Tell me about Pinkie Pie.
Right, so Pinkie Pie, right away, one of my favorite characters, and a character that really jumps out and says what she's all about. She's all about smiling, she's all about parties, and we felt like slam dunk right there. Something that was interesting about designing Pinkie Pie is that she used to boost creatures that were smiling in their art. And that was really fun, but the problem is that when we built that deck, we realized that there actually aren't that many creatures that are smiling in their art, or sometimes it can be hard to tell, like, is that battle-hardened grimace like really a smile or something? But what we discover is that a lot of the spells that are about smile, that have a really obvious smile in the art, are actually non-creature spells. It's like an instant or sorcery of someone smiling because they pulled off some awesome maneuver, or maybe it's an evil smile. But anyway, we figured out that we really needed to make sure that the ability did something with non-creatures in order to let you build your like all smiling art deck. So that's where it moved more to being about casting cards that have a smile in their art. That way you can get your instants and sorceries and enchantments and whatnot. The second line about partying, party being a Magic mechanic that is referencing a totally different kind of party, but here in a new context. It was just so hilarious. And even though it's tricky to find the cards that it works best with, it was just so much fun whenever it happened that we felt like it was definitely worth putting on there and just adding that extra flavorful punch to the card. Yeah, that line is so delightful to me. And like, hey, she's all about parties, so it's a very different party than you're used to in Magic. It's not quite the adventuring party, but hey, let's get the party together. It's gonna be a good time. And this is also another benefit of being a silver bordered card, because this is the kind of ability that would be very difficult to make work if we had to actually make the rules for party take into account this effect. But since this is kind of outside the normal rules, we could just say, hey, it's a party, just go wild. And last but certainly not least, Rainbow Dash. That's right, Rainbow Dash, probably one of the more combative of the cards. Also has a very, very strong personality and signature move. I think right from the get-go we knew that even though she was red-white, that was her personality and that was what fit best with her, we also knew that, hey, this card, like, Rainbow Dash literally has rainbow in her name. she makes rainbows everywhere she goes. She has the Sonic Rainbow, Mr. Signature move. So we knew it had to have this like add all the colors of mana ability. And really we focused on trying to find something that would make sense as so if the payoff is the Sonic Rainbow where you get all the colors, we wanted to make sure that she asked you to build a specific kind of deck that felt really connected to the character. So Rainbow Dash, she loves flying and she loves going fast. So the idea of building a deck that has those specific kinds of creatures that really are in line with her personal abilities and motivations meant that this was a really cool, awesome 5-color payoff, but that it asked you to kind of lean into the theme of the deck in order to achieve that payoff.
Now talk to me about this 20% cool reference, because I remember asking about that at work and you explained it to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect for this character.
That's right. So, we went through a lot of different versions of Rainbow Dash. But the one thing that really stuck throughout all the versions is that whenever somebody who was a fan of the show read the 20% cooler aspect, they immediately were like, that is hilarious. I love it. Make sure that stays on the card. So even though the design of the card changed a lot throughout time, that aspect of building up to a big payoff and using that 20% increment thing as a famous line from the show, it was really something that I felt was a great, memorable line in the show, definitely a meme within the larger fan community. But also it is a sort of fun silver bordered way of tracking something, instead of using counters or having to keep track in some way, just saying, hey, like, you just have this number that increments in whatever increment we decide. It doesn't really normally exist in the rules of Magic, but in the silver bordered world, we can make it happen. And it actually becomes a kind of nice, clean way of tracking this throughout turns. Even if Rainbow Dash leaves and comes back, you'll still be able to keep your coolness level.
I appreciate that you can go above 100% cool, just like keep ticking it up, try and get to as high of a cool as you can possibly imagine.
So one of the big jokes around the office is that this is the card that confirms that you are not cool until she shows up.
Oh no. Well, you're here first, everybody. And then finally get, that 5 colors of mana is you can play all your ponies in the same deck, right? It lets you build your 5-color commander deck if you want.
That's right. Princess Twilight Sparkle also has a 5-color activated ability. So if you get all of these together, Rainbow Dash is right there to give you the Wooburg mana, to pay into her ability, and have every pony win the game. And honestly, that is something that I'm so excited to finally be able to do. I have my, my version of the original Ponies the Galloping right here on my desk. But I also have another copy of an actual Ponies deck that I've built, and I'm so excited to be able to put these cards into that deck and finally live the dream of hopefully having every pony win the game. All
right, well, I look forward to both Chris and all of you out there finally being able to have every pony win the game. Before we part here, Chris, anything else you want to tell people about these cards or their designs?
Just that I'm super thankful to be able to work on this. Definitely one of my really fun memories from starting at Wizards, and now I'm finally able to kind of close out the loop and have all of these characters out there. I know that there's people out there who ask me, every year or every couple months, when are these rest of these ponies going to come out? So finally, your wishes have been granted, and we can all have fun with, Ponies the Galloping.
Well, awesome work, Chris. It's time to have a blast with them. Thanks, Chris. And if you have any more questions on the product, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you online over at Chris K. Mooney. Remember to head over to extralife.wizards.com to check all of this out and more. I'll talk with you again soon, and I'm sure I'll see many of you at MagicCon Las Vegas later this week. Say hi if you're there. And remember, you got this. Kicking things off, White Blue is a flying tempo deck that's all about the Frost Queen fairy tale. You play some cheap creatures and then can use things like tap and freeze cards to slow your opponent down and get just past your opponent. Keep an eye out for Solitary Sanctuary, which is an excellent uncommon for the deck that can slow your opponent down and pump up your creatures.